and welcome to the Folio. My name is Kejsi Petova, Brand Marketing Manager of Supplier Experience. And in this edition of the Folio Presents, we'll be going over what it means to be eco-friendly in the promotional products industry. Today, we're joined by Koozie Group's Paul Migliorino and Victoria Sierra to discuss Koozie Group's steps towards going green. Welcome, guys. I cannot think of a more fitting time for us to do this interview. It is Earth Month, and really excited to talk about ESG with Koozie Group. I know you guys have had quite a shift in the past couple years, all the way from environmentally conscious efforts down to your product line, and I'm excited to touch on all of that today with you guys. But first, I think it would be appropriate to kind of ask you, what does it mean to be environmentally conscious? What does it mean to go green for Koozie Group?
For us, I think it was a little bit of self-reflection and a little bit of what is it that customers are looking for from us. It always starts somewhere with some small thing. For example, we've been tracking our energy usage, our trash, water usage, things like that for years. We just didn't have like a true tracker for all of it until about 2021 or so. We basically saw that customers were wanting to know, what is it that we're doing that, recycling wise, what can we do better? And they were asking us those questions. So for us, it was a little bit of self-reflection of, okay, well, we need to figure out where to start before we can start doing better.
Okay, so it was a little bit of half moral driven, half market driven, which honestly, that's the best combo because everyone can get behind one or the other.
Right.
That is a really big overhaul, though. You said that you guys have been tracking for a couple of years, figuring out what your usage levels look like. But to go in and start overhauling and doing things with that information, that's a pretty big decision. What did the internal conversation look like for something like that?
So it started really with customers whispering in our ear, like, hey, have you heard of FSC, SFI, carbon neutrality? We had a few things in the works. So like, for example, we had products that had recycled material in it. We weren't necessarily highlighting those products. We weren't necessarily pushing them in any way. But once the customers kind of started asking us more of these questions, that it became more and more apparent that that's the way everything was headed. Conversations started really within each individual location that we have of, okay, well, what is it that we're doing here? And what is something that can be improved upon? Hey, I heard one customer talking about FSC. At this location, we do a lot of paper products. Maybe is that something we should start looking at? And then from there, doing the research. Is it something that we want to do? Is it both financially attainable? Is it implementable? Is it something that we can implement at the plants, at the locations that we have? And if you get the go ahead, you're able to do it financially, you're able to do it practically, then why not? Let's start pursuing this. It was interesting for us when we started pursuing FSC and SFI. We did it simultaneously, but it was late 2019, early 2020 when we started having the discussions, which meant by the time we were implementing it was full on COVID. So to get auditors to look at what it is that we're doing and say, yes, that's good, this is an area you can improve in, it was a little bit tricky, but
I mean, that just shows how dedicated you guys were, that in the midst of all of that, you hadn't lost the moral or market thread of what you were trying to accomplish. So I think that's a testament to the determination for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
So kind of word of mouth vibes, really putting your ear to the ground and seeing what your clients are saying, taking that information and running with it. How long would it take to compile all of that? It sounds like it was just an immense amount of data. I imagine just like getting it all together, figuring it out what it means. Was that like just a full year of coming up with a game plan? And then was there kind of a presentation? Was there any sort of pushback when you guys presented this theoretical, next step for Koozie Group?
Yes and no, which My coworkers give me a hard time for using that phrase a lot, but things are great, right?
You're
There's never
honest. You're
a
honest.
hard,
No one can fault you for that.
I try to be. So we did not receive a lot of pushback from it, but I think that's in part because of who we had advocating for it. So Pierre Montalban, he's currently our CEO. When we were pursuing FSC accreditation, he was in charge of product development and I believe marketing at the time. So because he was helping us advocate for this essentially with the higher ups, so to speak, I think it made it easier for us because in a nutshell, we pretty much did all the research. It was an informal presentation to Pierre. It wasn't, in a boardroom, here are charts and graphs and that kind of thing. But it was, there is going to be an increase in price for the products that we're sourcing, but, whether or not that's going to translate to an increase in sales, hard to say. Based on the whisperings we're hearing, so to speak, we are expecting we're going to have an increase in sales. We think it would be worth it in the long run. Are we going to recoup it in the first year? Probably not. But I mean, with anything you do, are you going to recoup it in the first year? So we didn't get a lot of pushback, thankfully. And again, I have Pierre to thank for that, or at least partially to thank for that.
Victoria, you mentioned that your current CEO of Koozie Group, Pierre, was a huge advocate. And I think that's such a testament to you really need people in kind of that like C-suite level or everyone to kind of have a similar vision of the future for your product line, for your company. Because if you didn't have that strong advocate, maybe there would have been more pushback. Maybe there would have been kind of the pessimism getting in the way. Do you think that's something that other people in the industry kind of struggle with currently, is deciding what's the cost effectiveness of going green right now?
Absolutely. And I will say, we may have had pushback, but Pierre was handling it. So I wasn't, I guess, in the room when it happened, but I absolutely agree that I do think a lot of customers, or I'm sorry, not customers. I do think a lot of companies in the industry are getting pushback at varying levels, which makes implementing anything more challenging. With us, it's kind of how we said, how you and I were talking before, that it's easier to implement things when there's both a moral reason to want to do it as well as a customer reason, because not everyone shares the same morals, right? But a lot of customers are looking for the same things. So it's a lot easier to convince others of, hey, this is a thing we should do, because we've had a ton of customers asking for it, versus when, we have one customer, they represent less than 1% of our sales. It's a harder sell. When I've received the question before, well, what do you recommend when, we want to pursue something, but we're getting pushback? I think being in sustainability in any level is a really fine line to walk, because you have to promote and advocate for changes both at a corporate level as well as like individual actions. And that's really hard to balance with meeting people where they are. Inherently, people are resistant to change, good, bad, or indifferent, but you want to, if you want to be better, you have to do better. If you want to do better, you have to be better. So where is the starting point? And I would say it's as simple as start looking at, what it is that you want to do and work backwards from there. So like, for example, if you want to start recycling more, well, are you recycling today? Yes or no? From there, how much are you recycling, right? If you're doing 100 pounds a month, okay, is there more to be recycled? Are things just getting landfilled? Do you want employees to start recycling water bottles? Maybe you address that some way. And it could be an internal policy of, hey guys, in an effort to recycle more, we want to provide you with these metal reusable cups. They're vacuum insulated, keep your drinks hot, cold, sell it in some way. It'll be easier to get people on board when it's a minor thing, when it's, hey, put it in this bin instead of the one directly next to it.
The old foot in the door, give them the old foot in the door method. Today it's recycling in the office.
Exactly.
Tomorrow it's FSC, FSI certifications.
Exactly. It's baby steps one way or another. And like baby steps, some steps are bigger than others. It's never going to be consistent until you're consistently working at it.
I think that's such a great mentality of meeting people where they're at. ESG is somewhere I feel like it's so overwhelming to think about it in the grand scheme, because hearing you talk with such passion, I feel like so many people have the same emotions behind it, where they want to do better, but they're just overwhelmed by where to start. But taking that kind of step-by-step approach, and even just small implementations, it can go a long way in shifting your personal everyday, and like shifting the people around you to eventually be able to take those big steps.
Yeah, in case just to add to that, I'll add to that because
Sorry, go ahead, Paul.
So from what I've seen out in the field, especially, like, a lot of credit goes to what Victoria said, like with Pierre Montauban, initiating this. Our chief revenue officer, Melissa Ralston, was an integral part, and Victoria has kind of carried the torch since. But when this all started, like right before the pandemic, this ESG was kind of like a little niche idea, but it has morphed from a little niche idea into now it's actually determining buying behaviors. So the fact that our senior staff, I don't want to say took a risk, but 4 years ago decided to go down that path, and to see where it has come now, like, that was a major step. And I believe like we've stayed ahead of the curve throughout all of this. So credit to our senior staff for really going down this road when it was kind of like an unknown.
Wow, that's honestly incredible. You guys really took on kind of this small niche idea, like you said, and you were able in a couple of years to snowball it into this huge monumental rebrand of Koozie Group. We have touched a little bit on FSC, FSI certification. Obviously, we know a little bit of what spurred you guys to take on something like that, but what does it actually take to go through the process and receive those certifications? What's kind of like the behind the scenes logistics of it?
Sure. So it was the research component first, right? Of what does it mean to become FSC certified? What do we have to implement in the plant? Things like that. And it was working on the internal processes. So, for example, when we purchase paper, we purchase it on like 5,000 pound rolls. It's not like sheets of paper. It's
not me going over to the Office Max.
No, it's not going over to Staples. It's it's a 5,000 pound roll. So starting from when you purchase it, are you documenting information on the invoice that says if it's FSC, SFI, none of the above? Further going to the next step, when you're putting it in your warehouse, in your plant, are you putting it with other products that are FSC certified, or is it going to be mixed in with non-FSC stuff, or is it going to be FSCs over here, SFIs over here, non-certifieds over here? And then tracking it the whole way through the plant. So you might use this category over here for sticky notes and this category over here for calendars, but you need to make sure they don't cross paths or accidentally get switched, essentially. So the internal tracking like that was something that we had to work on. We already had implement processes in place. It wasn't like we started from scratch. It was more fine-tuning it, going through our SOPs, our standard operating procedures, and adding more detail that we might have needed, and things like that. Once we had the physical, the processes in the plant, I think it was a little bit easier from there. I mean, there's always challenges to anything. One of the biggest ones we've had is getting the FSC information on the invoices, because we didn't change any of the products we offered. We just changed the components that went into those products. So for example, with calendars, paper goes into a calendar, right? You have metal wiring, you have the paper. But when the paper becomes FSC, you now need to note everything differently and track it all differently internally and how you convey it to customers. So getting FSC added on invoices to customers, which ones should have FSC noted versus SFI versus nothing noted. So that, I mean, at this point, we're a few years into our certification. We really have all that buttoned up. But as we launch new products that aren't calendars, right? So we have a couple of tech items that might have like a wood veneer. I know we're getting ready to launch an FSC pencil, making sure that now at a different plant, we're following the same processes to make sure that from intake all the way through imprinting, all the way through sending the product to a customer, it's being documented properly. And part of our certification, FSC comes out once a year and looks at us and says, are you still doing the right things? Maybe another problem has popped up that we didn't have at first, but when you change this thing, had a domino effect that changed things down the line.
So it's truly an ongoing, it's not something where you get it one time, you're going to have it forever. This is constant upkeep and maintenance. It's not easily taken on, which kind of leads me into wondering, we've seen kind of the term greenwashing hit the mainstream. And we do see a lot of kind of just products that are blandly labeled as green, or like promises of this is ethical or eco process, but nothing really backing it up. But hearing kind of the logistics of the behind the scenes, what truly goes in to make that happen and maintain that, it's years of work and upkeep. Does it kind of trigger like a red flag? Do you think that's something that, clients and consumers should keep an eye out for, is companies that previously have no history of any sort of ESG involvement or anything like that suddenly coming out in a very short period of time and saying, oh yeah, we're green, we're eco?
I think I'm wary to say, like, be nervous when you see that, because I don't want it to become a don't trust them because it was too quick kind of a situation. But I do like the trust but verify process. So like, hey, I see you guys are now offering products with recycled content. How are you yourself, how are you the company confirming that there's recycled content in this product and not just a virgin material? Essentially, like, what evidence do you have is my mentality to it, because that's how we approach it at Koozie Group. So anytime we have a new product that we're launching that contains recycled material, or if it's an existing product that we're switching over to recycled material, we're asking our suppliers, hey, can you fill out, we have a certificate that we designed, but can you fill out this certificate that says what the material is, how much of the product is made with that material? Is it pre-consumer or post-consumer? So that we can convey this information to our customers. And, kind of how we said that everything's a bit of a journey, that has also been a journey for us, because we've been collecting these certificates for years. And in the last year or so, we've started uploading the redacted certificates to the website. And now we're trying to take it a step further to really detail on our own website what is in the product. So rather than just saying, hey, this tumbler is made with 100% recycled stainless steel, we can say the tumbler of the body is made with 100% recycled stainless steel. The lid to the tumbler is made with 90% post-consumer polypropylene, and really give that level of detail, not necessarily because customers want it, but because it allows them to know, have a better idea of what it is they're purchasing.
And it's a good way of keeping yourselves accountable, is you've set this standard of having it on your website. So now that's a standard you have to maintain. It's like a good accountability measure. I really love that. There's probably someone over at Koozie Group's like, dang it. I wish you hadn't said that. It really does feel like, the eco movement has really, redefined promo and the promo industry. Do you guys feel this year or the past year, when did you feel the most drastic shift in the promotional products industry from your standpoint in regards to ESG?
So I have a feeling my answer to this might be different.
No, that's good. We have two different viewpoints.
So I think for me, it was within the last year or two. And part of the reason I say that is because annually, the product safety team at Koozie Group, we attend PPAI's Product Responsibility Summit, which is a 2 to 3 day conference of promotional product professionals, particularly in the product safety area. And it started as just focusing on product safety. What do you need to be looking for in test reports? What do you need to be conveying to customers when it comes to factory audits, things like that? And even honestly, with the factory audits, it's grown into more social and environmental areas. So the first year that I attended, I would say it was probably 75, 80% product safety, the remaining 20, 25% sustainability related. And the following year, which would have been last year, it was a full day of product safety followed by a full day of sustainability. And there was still a lot more to be talked about. So for me, that was my exposure to like the biggest swing in things. And I mean, I'm on the planning committee for this year. I know we're already looking to figure out what it is that we would like to talk about and present, to the point where PPAI now has two committees, one dedicated to product safety and one dedicated to ESG, sustainability, environmental social governance areas. So that's where I've seen the biggest swing. I don't know if Paul.
Yes, Paul, your rebuttal from the sales POV.
Well, believe it or not, I would actually kind of concur with Victoria that it has been the biggest change has been within the last 2 years. There was definitely interest 3 to 4 years ago, but it was kind of like they were interested until they saw the price. And we know that, going this route, things might be a little bit cost elevated. But it's kind of like people are now starting to realize, like, organic milk, even though it's much more expensive, might be better for you than regular milk. So I think people are getting over the initial cost elevation. And from especially the Facilis partners I deal with, like a lot of partners deal with Fortune 500 companies. And these companies are now leading the charge. Like they're saying, no, we don't want it unless it's environment, if it's sourced properly, if it's, eco-friendly. So with the Fortune 500 leading the way, I think companies are going to follow suit, and it's going to grow even more in the coming years. So that's what I see from the sales side.
It must feel incredibly validating for you guys because you've been working for years at this and starting so small and basically having these Fortune 500 companies kind of have that shift and it trickling down and affecting everyone. And did you ever just kind of like lay back and you're like, I told you so?
Well, personally, like, do I bask in it? Every now and then I like to, only because, so this is going to sound really weird. I feel like starts on anything are really underrated. Like people are always looking at like, what's the end goal? What's the finish? For example, like with a book, everyone always talks about the ending of Harry Potter. No one ever talks about like the beginning of Harry Potter, which I think is a real shame because the start is just as important as the finish. Because if you don't start, how are you going to finish, right? Like, where are you going to go from there? So yes, I do like to every now and then look back and be like, wow, we've done a lot in the last 3, 4, 5 years. It's really exciting to see. And I think the reason that starts are underrated is because people are like, you've done that. That's old news.
What's next?
What's the next big
move
thing?
On. What's coming next? But no, you're right. It's
right.
good to see where you started because it gives you a sense of accomplishment and it gives you a roadmap of what's possible because you've already achieved it.
Absolutely. And my thing has always been, it's kind of like when you're on a road trip. If you don't know where you're starting, you don't know what directions to take, right? So when I'm leaving my house, am I going to turn right or left? At some point, I'm going to have to turn. Which way am I going to go? Well, it depends on where I'm going. If I'm going to my grandparents, I'm going to go left. If I'm going to work, I'm going to go right. And that's kind of how I look at it with our sustainability stuff. Like, hey, it's really great that you guys are FSC certified. What's the next thing? Are you going to, go farther down that route, go PEFC? Are you gonna do a different certification? Are you gonna go carbon neutral, SBTIs?
Sky's the limit.
The world is expanding. Literally, yes.
So obviously, like these are very big changes, and the marketing aspect is finally kind of catching up, and you're able to talk about these products and back it up with evidence of what you've been doing. Paul, talk to me a little bit about this revamped product line. What is the direct effect on Koozie Group products?
Yeah, so we call this the KG factor, and we rolled this out back in 2020. And our marketing team and therefore our sales team have done a really great job at conveying what this is so that people understand it. What we wanted to do is we did not want to be known for trinkets and trash and things like that. We wanted long-lasting items out there in the hands of end users. And at the end of the day, that's what promotional products is all about. So the background on what the KG factor is, we did a nationwide survey of different demographics. We asked people 2 questions. If you got this promotional product as a gift, would you keep it? Or would you give it to a friend or family member because it's durable, it's functional, it's attractive, things like that? So if 8 out of 10 people at least said yes, we now designate that a KG factor item, which stands for Keep It, Give It. So not only do we label our current product offerings if they were KG designated, but anything we want to bring in new. At least 80% of our product mix that we're bringing in, we want that to be KG factor designated. And there's actually 3 pillars to this Keep It, Give It vision. One is being like a give back program, not only to, employees, but also organizations outside there. There's also a safety and social responsibility factor to this, and our environmental stewardship. So there's 2 facets of not only do we want sustainable materials like, recycled content and FSC, things like that, but we want to make sure that they are responsibly sourced too. And I know one of the things we've done in the past year or so is we've started to pivot away from countries that don't source their cotton in a
ethically in the most ethical,
very good
ways.
So our team, credit to them, they have done a fantastic job of finding those sources that have responsibly sourced cotton. Even from an access of information, I know we loaded up our product pages with all of our test documents, and they're readily available for us, for our partners, and for the end users. And then we always update our compliance page so that it's easy for people to see our overall efforts. So I know there's a lot there, but that's the entire vision of what our Keep It, Give It factor is. So.
See, I find that really interesting because the thing that really stuck out to me, aside from ethical sourcing, which in one woman's personal opinion is the next step to all of this, is not just the material content, but the labor that goes into it, where it's coming from, et cetera, et cetera. But like I said, the thing that really stuck out to me is that you're introducing products that you're testing to make sure they're going to have a long lifespan. They're not going to end up in a landfill. You're very intently creating products that are meant to be used and then testing that out. I think that's so unique. You don't really see that as often, I feel like. I think it's such a great mentality to have, to not be in a quote trinkets and trash mentality. Have that mindset of longevity for your products.
Well, if you're going to sell a product and the end user is only going to get to use it once, really, what's the point of that product?
Yeah, I personally am. See, now I'm bringing my personal shopping habits into the conversation. I see that I'm seeing it a lot personally with my clothing, and I'm gravitating towards kind of like what you guys talk about. The sticker shock is no longer affecting me because I know what I'm reaching for is made with better quality materials that is going to last longer. And, maybe the people who are making my shirts or whatever I'm buying, they're getting paid a fair wage, something like it really is touching everyone. And it makes sense that it would touch the promotional products industry. We're not immune to, societal trends, not by a long shot. So we have the KG factor. Let's talk give back programs. I know that's a huge part of it as well for you guys. If you could give me a little bit more info on what those look like.
Yeah, so, I've been with Koozie Group now for 10 years, and as far back as I can remember, we've always had some type of give back throughout the years. So I know right now from a corporate level, we have 2 defined give backs programs that I think it's been in place for a year and a half, almost 2 years now. So the first one is we actually give 1% of our writing instrument sales to regional chapters of the United Way based on where our factories are. So we work with the Minnesota chapter and we work with the Florida chapter of the United Way. The other one is we give 5% of our stock plush, stuffed animals, to a nonprofit called 4 Paws for Ability. And it's a organization that helps train dogs to become service animals. And we've worked so well with them over the past couple of years that this past year they gave us the opportunity to sponsor the newest litter of puppies that are going to be in the training course. So we got to name them Koozie and Click and all these other things. So that was really, really cool. But so those are the two give back campaigns that we have. But at the same time, from a employee perspective, Koozie Group actually gives us an opportunity to donate financially to one of their local favorite nonprofit organizations, or you could actually elect to take a one PTO day to go volunteer or work at the nonprofit. So they really give us, not only do we do something from a corporate level, but from our own personal level too. That's near and dear to our hearts. And I think over the past year, we've given between financial contributions and product contributions, we've given away over $200,000. So it just goes to show you the commitment that Koozie Group has to the give backs.
And I love that dual prong approach of local and then something a little bit more national on the corporate level. I think that's phenomenal because, you know, it really is the local communities that seeing that direct impact you have, it's so special. And I have to say, it's so clever to tie in the plush, the product itself, like the plushie, to, you know, an animal charitable program. I think that's so clever. But maybe it's just because I love animals that I'm so hung up on that. But I mean, who could hate that? Who could hate that?
No, nobody.
Yep. Well, and we would get email updates, I don't know, like once every month or two about the litter from Four Paws. And those were my favorite emails to get because they'd be like, you know, here's little Donnie. You can see how he's growing. And, you know, any pictures of the animals are usually to me really funny because like they're not always posed for them. So you'll see the dog, it's like, what? It's never seen a camera. So those were always
Victoria's best day in the office. She's like, it was worth checking the emails today. Finally.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I love that. That's clever and it's sweet. And I love to hear, you know, about companies that have the ability to give back doing so. With your product line, we've talked a lot about how you guys have basically these staple products. You've kind of redesigned them so they fit the standards and the new metrics. But what would you say is Koozie's first eco line?
So this is kind of a tricky question because, to be perfectly honest with you, we never had a line that we originally designed to be eco-friendly in some way, shape, or form, but it did accidentally kind of develop. So I would say probably our souvenir line, which, especially when it started with our calendars and scratch pads and things like that, it had existed. Essentially, once we became FSC certified, our souvenir line has always existed, but once we became certified, we were able to switch it from non-certified inputs to certified paper that we were using to make the calendars. So I think accidentally, souvenir was our first eco-friendly line that was using certified paper. And we have both calendars and sticky notes and scratch pads in that line. So because of our FSC certification, that line had a lot of products already. So, you know, the paper products was pretty easy to convert over. And we've been in the process of switching more writing instruments over. As you might see behind me, the blueprint for a souvenir pen. I don't know if that's one of the pens that we're switching over because I'm not good at identifying pens by sight.
You got to hold
my coworker who's in charge of them.
It's all about the hand feel.
Yeah. Thank you. And this one is really hard to hold. It's 2D. But we are in the process of switching more over. So I guess kind of accidentally, souvenir was our first eco line that has continued to grow.
That's really awesome though, because I feel like that's such a huge bulk of the Koozie Group line. So it's incredible that such a large chunk straight from the get-go was able to make that switch over.
Yep. And we're also working to switch other lines over. I think at this point, we carry products in just about every line that contains, if not certified material, recycled material. And I'm fairly confident that if that's not the case, if we have products that are not certified or recycled, we're working to add them to those lines so that we can say there's a little something for everyone, regardless of what it is you're looking for.
I think that's awesome. Paul, do you've kind of got your ear to the ground. Do you hear feedback about how the product line has evolved? Have you noticed that other people have noticed kind of the evolution of Koozie and how drastically things have changed in such a, just a span of a couple of years?
Yeah, from talking to partners and hearing what their end users are saying, and starting with even something as simple as our Bic round stick that could be made from the recycled pellets. But with this rapid competition now with other companies, other suppliers trying, to upgrade their ESG, sometimes we come up with very similar new items. Let's just say we have this one bag that attaches to your drink or your cup, and the difference between us and the competitor is ours is made from recycled content. So like even from boots on the ground, people are saying like they're going to choose ours because of that designation, rather than people are rushing to come up with a new product, but they're not going through the steps to get it recycled and certified and things like that. So it's amazing. Like 4 years ago, that probably never would have happened. But now, I was actually surprised. Like people, they see it, when they're searching for products, their customers are resonating with it. And we've seen pretty good success with this new product we launched because it's recycled versus over our competition. So yeah, people are noticing.
That's fantastic. Again, it must feel extremely validating.
Well, and if I can add, so I have a 9-year-old cousin. She is, I think, in 3rd grade.
That sounds right. I know a 9-year-old
my point where I'm going
well.
with this. Okay, cool. So what I thought was really interesting, so of course Stanley is like all the rage right now. Like you got to have a Stanley cup. Well, I remember we launched a new product that is similar to a Stanley cup. It's, I think, a 40-ounce tumbler, vacuum insulated, made with recycled materials. So I remember she really wanted one. I wasn't able to find, her parents weren't able to find the color she wanted. So I was able to get one from work that I brought to her. And at first she was like, well, it's not a Stanley. I don't want it. And I was like, well, this one's better than a Stanley. It's made with recycled materials. And at 9 years old, she had maybe not the same comprehension that you or I might have, but she had an understanding that, oh, that's like really cool. I don't think the Stanleys are made with recycled material, but this one is. So even from a really young age, kids are understanding what it means when something's recycled versus virgin material, which is wild to me because when I was 9 years old, I barely understood I barely know how to spell recycle. Like,
okay, we seem to be very similar childhoods. I also had struggles spelling that word, so you and me, we're like this.
Yep.
Paul, you don't have to admit to anything you don't want to.
No, I'm not. I plead the fifth.
No, but that is huge because like we've been talking about this whole time it's this huge societal shift, and seeing it in someone that young, understanding that it means something for a product to have recyclable materials and it has a positive connotation for them immediately. Like that's fantastic. That's incredible. And it's wonderful that you're able to, give her that option. And that's what you guys are trying to do every day is give people the recyclable, the ESG, the green option. So for folks that are trying to kind of shift their mindset, shift their business practices, and adopt new sustainable and, eco programs, do you have any advice for them?
So to quote my dad on this one, keep it simple, stupid. And by that I mean, get to the very basic level. Like, you want to recycle more? Cool. What are you recycling? Like, you can't recycle more until you know what you're recycling. You want to become carbon neutral? Great. You got to start tracking your carbon emissions. And with that one, it's kind of tricky. So there's 3 scopes to carbon tracking: scope 1, scope 2, scope 3. Most people would think, oh, well, let me start with scope 1. It's number 1, right? Like that's where I should start. Scope 1 is not even the easiest one to track. Scope 2 is easier to track because that's the energy that you're using, that you're purchasing from your electric company. So when you get your electric bill once a month, once every other month, whatever it is, that's a really great way to say like, okay, so we used X many kilowatt hours this month. You can then, if your company doesn't supply it, there's a lot of free tools online. You can go online and say, okay, I'm in the state of Florida in the Tampa St. Pete area. What does my energy grid look like? If I'm using 100,000 kilowatt hours, what is the emission factor for that? And just, it's a punch and play, a plug and play. You can just input the numbers to figure it out. So my advice would be just start looking at what you're doing, start tracking it. again, you can't get to a finish. You can't set a goal if you don't start. So start somewhere.
I love it. And I feel like ESG, we're talking about starts, but I am going to ask you guys to look to the future. I'm going to ask about the future because I feel like this is a topic where you can have those really big goals. You can, conceptualize for 3, 4, 5 years down the line where you want to see yourself. So my question is, 5 years from now in the future, what can we expect from Koozie Group?
So I am both working towards and would love to see us start purchasing RECs, which are renewable energy credits. And you can get those. Usually there's some kind of program that your local electric company has that you can purchase them through. That's, I think, a really good place for us to start with what we can be doing in the future. And I would say that's more of a short-term goal. As a long-term goal, I would love for us to set science-based targets. I don't know if you've heard of SBTI, the Science-Based Target Initiative, but it is in a very, very simple, like broken down kind of nutshell. It is, what are you doing to get to carbon neutral or net zero emissions by 2050? And it's looking at what internal processes are you taking? Are you switching from propane-powered forklifts to battery-powered forklifts? Once you've done that switch, are you purchasing RECs, or do you have some kind of green energy process on property, or that is feeding into your property? So, for example, we're in the state of Florida. Are you able to put solar panels out? And maybe don't include this part because, like, we looked into solar panels, but we can't put them on our roof because we have our AC units on our roof. So, that's, if solar is not an option for us, what's another option we can do? Is there something else we can do? If it's not in Florida, is there something we can do in Minnesota, in Missouri to offset all of the plants or some of the plants?
It sounds like you guys have your eyes set on these big goals, and I believe you will reach them. Just after everything we've talked about today, everything you've done in the past couple of years, it feels, when you talk about it, it feels so attainable just based on the history of everything you've done so far. That's incredible. And last question, is there anything you guys would like to kind of discuss more? Anything you'd like to plug? Any specific products near and dear to your heart that you feel exemplify ESG?
Yeah, I think, we've talked about a lot today, and I mean, we didn't even get to mention about our carbon neutrality. I think we're on scope 1s and 2s for greenhouse gas emissions and scope 3 for basic emissions, right? Even something that's not going to show up in our reports is, speaking from a sales perspective, we offer fleet vehicles to our staff, and as the mile, when they're done with their previous car, they reach the miles. Now we're getting hybrid cars, which is a little bit different, but good for the environment. Even for the things that, we have unavoidable emissions, we support different things like, the Brazilian rainforest and how we're helping replant some of the trees there. There's a lot that we've done, and I hope that, partners and end customers realize, like, Koozie Group has done their homework. I think we should be one of the industry leaders when it comes to ESG. And I think we've done all of the homework. Like, we always tell people we have steel-worthy content. So partners could use our reports, use our data, use our KG factor items, and be able to speak to their end users. And then ipso facto, they become the experts in ESG. I know our sales staff is, if ESG was 10% of their presentation 4 years ago, it might be 30 now. It might be 40% because, like we said, companies are following suit. They're interested. They want the long-lasting products. They want the sustainable products. I'm proud of what we've done over the last 4 years. I'm looking forward to the next 4 years, Victoria. So I know we got a lot of work to do, but I hope if anybody takes from this chat is that Facilis has a preferred partner in Koozie Group that really takes ESG to heart, and I think what we've done shows that.
And to build off of what Paul was saying, a lot of the things that we've discussed today, we also have A lot of the things we've discussed today, we also discuss in more detail in our Keep a Giver report. It's our annual report. We're actually getting ready to release it, I think, in the next week or two.
Fantastic.
And it talks about, this was great timing.
Great timing, because Earth Day is also coming up. It's all lining up.
Yep. But in our Keep a Giver report, we talk about, what are we doing on the product safety side? Adding certificates to the website, things like that. Our sourcing, we talk about our carbon neutral efforts. That was our goal for last year, was to become carbon neutral certified by, I think it was by 2025. And we met it last year. We met it in calendar year 2023. Incredible. So we talk a lot about what we did with carbon neutral reporting, how we were able to calculate what our emissions were, what offsets we purchased, how we decided to purchase those. So keep your eye out. The report's coming, but it'll detail a lot of the things that we've talked about today.
That's honestly so fantastic. You guys have achieved a lot. I can't wait for the community to see the report. Everyone, this is homework you want to steal. Steal their homework, use it. Koozie Group wants you to use their expertise. Koozie Group wants you to be the expert with your clients on ESG, and they're putting in all of the work to make that as easy and simple for you as possible, is what I'm getting from this. I feel like I'm walking away from this conversation a little better informed on ESG in general, on Koozie Group, what you guys stand for. I feel a little bit like I've taken some expertise from you guys today. To catch more interviews like this, head over to the Folio.